The story opens with an old man coughing, his words whispered. I am an earthling from a civilized society. Just then, the door creaks open and a little girl steps inside, bundled in thick winter clothes, her cheeks red from the cold. She's carrying a steaming bowl of food in both hands. When she sees the old man's condition, her brows draw together with concern. Mr. Seo, are you okay? My mother sent this for you. The old man, Seo, forces a weak smile and thanks her. She kneels to place the bowl gently on the floor. It's no problem, she chirps. Please get well soon, and make some more soap. With those bright, innocent words, she slips back outside and instantly vanishes into the swirling snowstorm. The door shuts behind her with a hollow thud, leaving Seo alone with the fading warmth of the bowl. Seo, an earthling. A man from a civilized world. And it has been years since he fell into this cursed one. He, Director Kim, and the rest of their co-workers had been on their way to a company workshop when the landslide struck, fast, merciless, unstoppable. One moment they were joking about who'd get drunk first, and the next, the world was a roaring wall of mud. When consciousness returned, they woke in a place that defied every rule they knew. A world with house-sized three-tailed foxes. Massive twin-headed snakes thicker than telephone poles. Warriors soaring through the sky on swords like living comets. It was a world straight out of the martial arts novels Seo used to read on his lunch breaks. Most of his colleagues, surprisingly, thrived here. Within days, their destinies unfolded. Mystical sages descended like divine recruiters and whisked them away. Turns out, his co-workers possessed rare, mythical talents, things out of legend. But not Seo. And not Director Kim. They waited for a miracle of their own, but none came. They had no special abilities, no supernatural gifts. With no clue how this world worked, they did what they could, they toiled. Manual labor, odd jobs, anything for a bite of food. For months they carried, scrubbed, hauled, and bargained in dusty marketplaces just to survive. Then one day, Director Kim snapped. He said he couldn't live like this anymore. He took all the money he had and bought a shabby, third-rate martial arts manual from some sketchy street vendor. Everyone laughed at him, until 3 months later, he wasn't a joke anymore. He mastered it. He actually mastered it. From then on, Kim shot through the ranks like a firework. Stronger manuals, tougher techniques, bigger opportunities. And finally, as a true warrior, he left with the Jang clan, leaving Seo behind. Seo kept waiting for his miracle. But it never came. Many years later, he's just an old man losing a battle to a common cold. Coughing up blood. Clinging to fading memories of Earth. Still, he had tried. He really had. He learned the language. Worked as a laborer. Saved every coin until he could buy a modest plot of land and build a small house. He even found success making and selling soap, an exotic luxury in this medieval-style world. But success paints a target. Thieves stole his formula, copied it, mass-produced it, and shoved him out of the market. Overnight, everything he built vanished. Now he lies on his bed, weak, forgotten, waiting for the end. Rejected by this world, Seo clenches the blankets and cries out in a trembling voice. What do you want from me? I tried my hardest, so what more must I do? Tears spill freely. Why wasn't he chosen? Why was he the one destined to lose everything? His strength fades. His eyelids grow heavy. As darkness closes in, a final bitter thought drifts through his mind. If only I had just a little more power, maybe things could have been different. His breath slow. His fingers loosen. And in that lonely, silent room, Seo's life ends. But then, a blinding flash of light erupts. Seo gasps and opens his eyes. His hands, once trembling and wrinkled, are young, smooth, and full of life. He looks down. He's wearing his old clothes from Earth, a blue shirt, sweatpants, everything just as it was. He turns and sees them all. Director Kim. Chief O. Section Chief John. The whole team. A shock sweeps through him as realization dawns. He hadn't been powerless. He hadn't been unchosen. He had gained an ability. Regression. This, right now, was his first one. Director Kim, hair half-shaved from the barbershop they visited earlier, spins around in confusion. What's happening? We were just on our way to a workshop. He didn't know where they were. But Seo did. This was day one. Seo's memory trembles. He tries to piece the moment together, an SUV, the landslide, that sudden white flash. The year-old memory ripples at the edges. A voice calls out from behind. Hey, Deputy Manager! Seo doesn't answer. His mind is racing with one question. Now that I've regressed, how should I live? He'd read plenty of regression novels. Heroes using future knowledge to rise above everyone else. But him? All I know is how to make soap. Suddenly, a hand clamps down hard on his shoulder. Manager Seo Yoon-hyun! A voice shouts. The bark snaps him out of his thoughts. He turns to see Section Chief John, face twisted, temper already boiling over. Sorry, Seo says, startled. I was just... Swish. The slap cracks through the air like a whip. Seo reels as the sting spreads across his cheek. Everyone freezes, their breaths caught. Deputy Manager Seo! John screams. You bastard! You dozed off at the wheel on a mountain road. You nearly got us all killed. Seo stares blankly. That title, Deputy Manager, feels foreign. He hadn't heard it in years. It takes him a moment to realize John is talking to him. John steps closer, veins bulging. Do you want to lose your job the moment we get back? And suddenly the memory hits him, sharp and clear. John Myung-hoon, Executive Director's nephew. His entire position, every ounce of authority, came from nepotism. Back then, John had been the one scheduled to drive. But instead, he dumped a week's worth of overdue work on Seo the night before. Seo stayed up all night finishing it, and then, exhausted, he nodded off behind the wheel. This stupid bastard! John shrieks, pointing accusingly. We're stranded because of him. The memories of Seo's last life rise like a wave. He remembers how stunned he'd been. How he simply apologized. He apologized to this bully. To bandits who robbed him. To martial artists who mocked him. To officials who taxed him into the dirt. But a lifetime in hell taught him one thing. You only bow to those you can't handle. Seo straightens his spine. Section Chief John, he says, voice calm and steady. I know you're upset. But now's not the time for pointing fingers. You damn son of a gun! John roars and swings a punch at his face. That punch seals it. There was no reason to bow to a weakling like this. Seo didn't flinch. He spun, planted his feet, and drove a solid punch straight into John's face. The blow cracked through the clearing, and John stumbled backward with a strangled gasp. The others froze, eyes wide, completely stunned. Seo didn't stop. He lunged forward and tackled John to the ground, unleashing blow after blow, sharp, relentless, unhesitating. His fists moved on instinct. His past life had been a never-ending education in pain, beatings from martial artists, ambushes by bandits, extortion from corrupt officials. All of that suffering had carved something into him that normal office workers simply didn't have. A capacity for violence. Now, with John pinned beneath him, Seo realized that brutal world had given him a strange kind of advantage. He knew exactly where to hit to break someone's spirit. He knew a strike to the eyes made fear explode inside a man. And he knew, without question, that a beaten man eventually choked out the same two words. I'm sorry! John gasped, trembling. Exactly as Seo expected. Seo wasn't blessed with mythical talents. He didn't have world-shaking martial arts. But for the first time, he finally had the power to shift his fate. Director Kim, Chief O, and the others stared at him with faces drained of color. No one dared move. No one dared speak. Director Kim found his voice first, though it shook. Deputy Manager Seo, no matter the reason, how could you beat a colleague so brutally? You're right, Director Kim, Seo said calmly, not bothering to argue. I lost my temper. I apologize for frightening everyone. He bowed deeply. He knew he would never see them again anyway. I was the one driving, Seo continued. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. Director Kim's expression softened a little. Section Chief John was too harsh, he admitted quietly. You couldn't have prevented a landslide. He overreacted. Even so, Director Kim insisted Seo apologize directly to John. Seo didn't protest. He knew Director Kim was destined to become one of this world's strongest martial artists. Supporting him now wasn't just the right choice, it was strategic. Building goodwill early could only help him later. Seo turned to John and extended a hand. My reaction was uncalled for, he said evenly. I apologize. John, his face swollen and purple, looked like he wanted to retaliate. But when his eyes met Seo's, he froze. Those eyes were cold. Empty. Completely devoid of fear. Once things calmed down, Director Kim gestured toward the looming forest. We should try to find a village. That's the logical thing to do. Seo nodded. I agree. But inside, he already knew the truth. This was the Ascension Path, deep forest territory in the land of Mirim. Here, the only rule was simple, the strong devour the weak. Immortals and warriors fought for glory, power, and survival. And in a place like this, there were no villages anywhere near. The sun is setting, Seo said instead. We should find a safe place to build a shelter for the night. Director Kim nodded. But what about the car? We have a lot of supplies for the workshop. The car was long gone, buried, crushed, lost, But Seo knew they wouldn't believe him if he said so. Wasting his breath wouldn't help. Let's split up, he suggested. One team can look for the car, the other can search for shelter. We'll meet back here before dark. Hours later, Seo had a fire blazing inside a cave he'd found. The group sat around it, eating the root vegetables he'd gathered. The warmth of the flames made the cave feel almost cozy, a strange contrast to the terror waiting outside. I don't get it, a black-haired girl murmured. We were inside a car during a landslide. How did we end up here, but the car didn't? This tastes like chestnuts, another girl said, crunching thoughtfully. Is it crunchy? Seo asked, smiling faintly. There's plenty more. Eat as much as you'd like. Director Kim chuckled. This is a serious situation, but thanks to Manager Seo, it almost feels like fun. I always knew you were dependable. Seo noticed John sulking alone in the corner, refusing to eat. Director Kim raised his voice slightly, just enough for John to hear. Deputy Manager Seo, if I remember correctly, you were exhausted because you worked late last night, right? He's right. A brown-haired girl chimed in. Our manager is incredibly diligent. And it feels like we're camping, thanks to the cave he found, added a red-haired girl. Seo knew they were all telling the truth. In his past life, it had taken them hours, stumbling around aimlessly, to find this cave. He just shrugged. I was lucky. They all laughed and told him to accept the compliment. Seo allowed himself a small smile. He soaked in their voices, their warmth. Because he knew this would be the last time they ever laughed together. The next morning, Seo was on his knees, trembling as he offered greetings to the Lord of the Forest. Towering above him was a colossal seven-tailed fox, its red eyes glowing like molten embers. When it smiled, the expression was chilling. Human, it rumbled, its voice ancient and resonant. You have a unique scent. In my 1,000 years, I have never encountered one like it. The commotion stirred the black-haired girl awake. What's going on? She murmured as she stepped out of the cave. Her eyes landed on the fox, and a terrified scream ripped from her throat. Her cry jolted the others awake. One by one, they stumbled out of the cave, and their screams joined hers as they caught sight of the monstrous creature blocking their exit. Show some manners! Seo yelled over his shoulder. Get on your knees before the Lord of the Forest! The fox's smile widened. Every time I meet your kind, it purred, I am reminded of how foolish and rude you are. Normally, I would tear you limb from limb. Its gaze shifted back to Seo. However, since one of you knows his place, I shall be merciful. Its red eyes swept across the terrified group. That said, you must pay a toll for trespassing in my territory. Offer me an arm, and I will permit you to live. The demand hung in the air like a blade, freezing their terror into something sharper, colder. Seo's own heart hammered in his chest. He remembered this moment vividly from his past life. The screams, the chaos, the panic, and the way the enraged fox had slaughtered them all. But this time, Seo felt a flicker of relief. At least the fox was speaking to them. At least it recognized his respect. In his previous life, it hadn't even given them that chance. Licking its chops, the fox asked calmly, almost playfully, which of them would offer an arm. It's just one arm. Seo calculated silently. A small price to pay. Besides, he knew the cultivators who would arrive in 2 days could easily heal a lost limb. He had even prepared a pain-dulling herb in advance. Steeling himself, Seo pushed up his sleeve and extended his trembling arm toward the beast. I will offer my arm, he announced. The others stared at him in shock, stunned that he'd sacrifice himself for them. You know your place, human, the fox rumbled. Its massive mouth opened wide. In return, I will make this quick and less painful. It lunged. A scream of raw agony tore from Seo's throat as the fox's jaws clamped down with overwhelming force, severing his arm completely. His colleagues looked away, unable to watch. Blinding pain consumed him. Tears streamed down his face as he fumbled for the herb with his remaining hand and shoved it into his mouth. After swallowing the arm whole, the fox seemed disappointed. I thought you might taste different, given your scent, it commented. But you are the same as any other human. Worse, even, with all the impurities in your blood. As it spoke, the herb finally began to work, dulling the excruciating pain and clearing his mind. Seo bowed his head. I apologize that my offering was not to your liking. The fox barely cared. You may remain in my territory for a week, it declared as it turned away. My divinity will keep you from dying here. With a single powerful leap, the beast launched into the sky and vanished. The moment it disappeared, the others rushed toward Seo. Everyone inside, he grunted, staggering to his feet. I'll explain everything. Inside the cave, Seo told them what the fox had revealed earlier that morning. We are in a land called Murim. The name sent a shockwave through the group. Murim? Director Kim repeated, disbelief written across his face. Like, in the novel stories? It doesn't matter, Seo said, voice strained. What matters is that we are safe for 1 week because I paid the toll. Only a week? Director Kim pressed. Then what happens after that? Seo took a ragged breath. Next week, it will demand another price. Stunned silence fell over the group as the herb's sedative effect grew stronger. Seo's eyelids drooped. I'm going to rest, he murmured, and he immediately collapsed into sleep. He awoke hours later, alone in the dark cave. Outside, he heard hushed, angry voices. How can you even say that after he sacrificed his own arm? Chief O was demanding. So what's the plan then? John shot back. Who's going to volunteer an arm or a leg every single week? Manager Seo is useful, Chief O argued. He found us food and this shelter. Exactly, John said coldly. We learn everything we can from him this week. He's already lost an arm. He's not going to last long anyway. We make him the sacrifice again. Listening from the shadows, Seo felt a cold fury crawl up his spine. Now that he was weak, John saw him as nothing more than livestock, something to butcher regularly for survival. His hand closed around a fist-sized rock. After everything he had endured in his past life, killing a soft, modern man like John would be effortless, even with one arm. He watched John continue trying to convince the others. Seo raised the rock, knuckles white. The urge to act surged, but he forced himself to stop. Killing John now would be reckless. Fear was making them irrational, and such an act would permanently damage his standing with Director Kim. Seo let the rock fall and silently retreated deeper into the cave. Suddenly, Chief O's voice rang out again, sharp, final. Shut your mouth, John, unless you want your other ankle broken. A small, grim laugh escaped Seo. Chief O was right. They were good people, just trapped in an impossible situation. The next morning, as the sun climbed higher, the group gathered outside the cave. The forest felt heavier than before, too quiet, too watchful. This time, a monstrous two-headed snake slithered into view. Its scales gleamed like black steel, and each head moved independently, tongues flickering in opposite directions. Unlike the ravenous fox, the snake made only a modest request, a small amount of blood. Seo immediately recognized it. In his past life, this was the same creature that had preyed on Chief O after he'd been crippled. But this time, hearing its mild demand, a nervous Chief O stepped forward and offered his arm. Both heads leaned in. Both took a small sip. And then both recoiled violently. The snake gagged, retching onto the forest floor. Disgusting! It hissed. This is the worst human blood I have ever tasted. Chief O's face flushed with embarrassment and anger, but Seo already knew the reason. The blood of a 21st century office worker, nicotine, caffeine, cholesterol, of course it tasted foul. Seo turned his attention elsewhere. John Myung-hoon, he called sharply. Come with me. We need to gather herbs. John stared at him, stunned. Did you just use my full name? Seo ignored the question. Are you hungry? John hesitated before muttering. Yeah. Seo walked over and looked him in the eye. I'll teach you which fruits and herbs are edible. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. I plan to offer my other arm to the fox next week. If I die, someone needs to know how to keep everyone else alive. The color drained from John's face. He realized instantly, Seo had overheard everything from the night before. He was trapped. And he had no choice but to obey. Seo had to hide a smirk. Thank me? He thought. The fox isn't coming back. And you'll never get to use this knowledge anyway. He led John to a grove of fruit trees and began the lesson. John Myung-hoon! Seo barked. How many times do I have to tell you? Not that one. Sorry. John muttered, reaching for a different fruit. That one will kill you, Seo said flatly. For hours, Seo relentlessly ordered John around, forcing him to dig, forage, and memorize every herb and fruit he pointed out. Exhausted, John finally begged for a break, panting from the non-stop labor. Seo felt a cold, quiet satisfaction settle in his chest. This was exactly how John had hazed him back when he first joined the company. We need to finish before dusk, Seo said firmly, offering him no rest. Hurry up. As they worked, John's shovel struck something large. He dug around it and pulled up a massive, twisted root. This thing is huge, he breathed. Is this wild ginseng? Something like that, Seo replied vaguely. In truth, it was a yellow bamboo root. Ordinarily the size of a pinky finger, but here, deep in the energy-rich soil of the Ascension Path, it grew into monstrous shapes. Useless to true cultivators, but incredibly precious to martial artists. A single root could greatly increase internal chi. This will be perfect for Director Kim, Seo thought. They unearthed 2 more just like it. Is it really okay to take this much? John asked. It's fine, Seo said. Take off your shirt and wrap them up. As John complied, Seo glanced toward the horizon. The sun was dipping low, and in the distance he saw a faint shimmering distortion in the air. A crack in space. It was almost time. The cultivators were coming. Let's head back, Seo announced. As they reached the cave, the shimmering crack exploded. A shockwave of pure spiritual energy blasted into the sky. Instantly, John collapsed, clutching his head and screaming. Chief O and Manager Kong fell to the ground beside him, writhing in agony. What's happening to them? Director Kim cried out. Before anyone could react, 3 figures descended from the sky. The first, a man in radiant gold robes named Buko, surveyed the screaming trio with interest. What a surprise, he mused. To think we'd find such raw talent here. Back off, Buko, snarled the second man, dressed in pitch-black robes. They're mine. Shameless, scoffed the third, draped in brilliant blue. Terrified, Director Kim stammered incoherently, but the cultivators ignored him completely. They scanned the group, dismissing the mortals instantly. Only 3 possessed spiritual roots. Buko raised a hand. A crackling orb of lightning formed in his palm. He fired it at John, whose screams intensified as thousands of volts surged through his body, until, abruptly, the lightning vanished. Buko's expression lit with awe. Incredible. The physique of heavenly golden thunder. My turn, Higuak said, shoving him aside. He lifted a strange musical instrument, and began to play. Manager Kong clamped her hands over her ears and released a shriek so powerful it echoed through the forest. Higuak's eyes widened. The ghostly Een, transforming a mortal root. I never thought I'd witness one in person. Finally, the cultivator in blue landed softly before Chief O. He placed a hand on O's shoulder and infused him with spiritual energy. A unique holy body, he declared. Remarkable. What is happening to me? Chief O gasped, overwhelmed. The blue-robed cultivator smiled gently. All 3 of you possess the talent to change the world. I will take you as disciples of the Azure Heaven Creation Sect. How does that sound? Chief O felt as if the man's presence alone could crush him. He could barely breathe, let alone refuse. Before he could respond, Higuak swooped down. Join the Black Ghost Valley instead. We offer immortality, the power to overturn the heavens, fame, and wealth. I'll ensure you obtain all of it within a century. Buko descended too. What nonsense! The Golden Divine Heavenly Thunder sect is clearly the most suitable for them. As the 3 argued, Director Kim stepped forward desperately. Please, can you just get us out of this forest? We'll die here. They ignored him as if he were air. Buko uncapped a small bottle. Mortals worry far too much, he said with disdain, glancing at Director Kim. How did you even reach the ascension path with such worthless bodies? He aimed the bottle at John. John was sucked inside with a final, desperate scream. The blue-robed cultivator prepared to leave with Chief O, but paused and looked at Seo. A faint smile touched his lips. It seems one of you lost an arm to that fox. Judging by the wound, he offered it willingly. He gestured gently, and a wave of power washed over Seo. You may be a mere mortal, he said, but you have guts. Seo watched in shock as his arm completely regenerated. Thank you, he breathed. After Higuak secured Manager Kong, the 3 cultivators rose into the sky. As they departed, their voices echoed down. We have cleared the ascension path of all beasts on our way here. It should be safe for the next few years. Wait! Director Kim shouted, chasing after them. Hold on! Where do we go? Which way is out? He called their names, John, Chief O, Manager Kong, but it was useless. They vanished into the clouds. A familiar wave of disappointment washed over Seo. It had happened exactly the same years ago. The cultivators had treated them like insects. Still, he was relieved to have his arm back. Director Kim finally collapsed, gasping for breath. What are we supposed to do now? He whispered in despair. But just as hope drained from him, dozens of beams of light streaked across the distant sky, following the path the cultivators had taken. Director Kim watched, confused. What are those streaks? Is something over there? Despite the mysterious sight, he couldn't abandon his remaining team. He turned back toward the cave. The next day, a fierce thunderstorm raged, lightning cracking through the sky. The 4 who remained, Director Kim, Manager Kim, Deputy Manager O, and Seo, huddled together for shelter. Deputy Manager O's condition was worsening. She lay on the cold ground, coughing up blood. Is there some kind of herb we can find? Manager Kim asked desperately. She's in terrible shape. Knowing what would come next, Seo answered calmly. Let's just wait a little longer. Someone might show up to heal her. Manager Kim stared at him, bewildered. Just then, footsteps echoed from the cave entrance. A figure emerged from the rain-swept darkness. Mortals in the ascension path, the stranger said, his voice deep and resonant, are like ants caught in a battle between dragons. Director Kim immediately stepped in front of the others. Who are you? He demanded. The man smiled, his presence filling the cave like a rising tide. I am the Sea Dragon King, Seo Huiol, he said. The woman is controlling the storm, Seo Huiol announced. Everyone stared at him in shock. This tempest appeared from nothing. The Sea Dragon King continued, gesturing toward the unconscious deputy manager O. She is the cause. She must be a master of storm sorcery. He leaned in, studying her with genuine fascination. And yet, she is an ordinary mortal without a trace of cultivation. How can she wield such power, and unconsciously at that? Very strange. We're the ones who are confused, Seo interjected. We've only been here a short time, yet one powerful being after another keeps showing up and taking our colleagues away. The Sea Dragon King burst into laughter. Are you telling me you wandered into this world with several colleagues of extraordinary potential, then powerful cultivators arrived to claim them, and now here I am, conveniently standing before this woman? That's exactly what happened, Seo confirmed. The Sea Dragon King smiled as if the whole situation amused him deeply. Dear mortal, do you know where you are? This is the Ascension Path, the gateway to the upper realm. In a few months, a dimensional rift, the Ascension Gate, will open nearby. This only happens once every 1,000 years. Countless cultivators and spiritual beings are already gathering here to ascend. Is it really so surprising that you would cross paths with us? The explanation finally clicked for Seo. But Director Kim was still lost. Those cultivators said they were taking our colleagues to join their sect. How can they do that if they're all ascending to another realm? A concept likely difficult for a mortal to grasp. Seo Huiol replied patiently. He pulled out a small bottle, identical in appearance to the one Byuko had used. We have techniques to shrink vast structures and store them inside magical tools like this. Those cultivators have likely stored their entire sects in such items, intending to bring everyone with them to the upper realm. In fact, he added, patting the bottle, I have one of the undersea castles of my Sea Dragon clan stored right here. Thousands of my kin lie dormant inside. Seo and Director Kim's jaws dropped. The Sea Dragon King gently patted Deputy Manager O's head. So peculiar, so intriguing, he murmured. If she joins my clan, she could become something truly extraordinary. Get away from her! Director Kim shouted, lunging forward. He was instantly slammed to his knees by an overwhelming invisible force. Every time he struggled, the pressure intensified. Seo Huiol lifted Deputy Manager O into his arms. I will give her my blood and accept her as my kin, he said. This is the best outcome for all of you. Then he turned his glowing green eyes on Director Kim. A piece of advice, do not ask questions of high-level cultivators. As he spoke, the pressure on Director Kim and Seo doubled. It felt as if their eyeballs might burst from their sockets. I answered your questions out of generosity, the Sea Dragon King said, walking toward the cave's entrance. Most would have killed you for the impertinence. With that, he stepped into the raging storm, and his form erupted into that of a colossal dragon whose body seemed to stretch across the clouds. With a deafening roar, he soared into the sky. The next morning, the storm was gone, replaced by clear, quiet skies. The silence was crushing. For Manager Kim, it was too much. The avalanche, the monsters, the immortals, the abductions. Everything crashed down on her all at once. She began to unravel. Seo approached her gently. Manager Kim. She grabbed his arm, shaking violently. Manager Seo, please, she begged, tears spilling down her cheeks. They can't take you too. If you're gone, I can't survive here alone. Seo wanted to promise her something, anything, to ease her fear. But when he looked into her devastated eyes, he knew the truth. Their time together was nearly over. Before he could speak, Manager Kim suddenly screamed, clutching her head. She collapsed, her eyes wide with terror. Something's coming, she shrieked. Director Kim rushed to her side. What's wrong with her now? Suddenly, the entire jungle erupted into chaos. Birds shrieked and blasted from the trees. Animals fled in a panic stampede through the undergrowth. Manager Kim trembled violently, gasping a single word. And before Director Kim could even respond, an old man appeared. A great mechanical lion strode beside him, its metal joints hissing softly. He looked down at the bewildered group, stunned. Mortals? How did mere mortals find their way to the ascension path? He studied them for a moment, then chuckled. Ah, I see. The space around the ascension gate becomes unstable just before it opens. You must have been caught in a spatial storm. He laughed heartily, delighted by his own deduction. Dismounting the mechanical lion, he approached them with interest. No, he said, eyes narrowing. Which one of you just emitted that massive wave of consciousness? It was so powerful I thought a sage from the upper realm had descended. His gaze fell on the whimpering Manager Kim. Was it her? Who are you? Director Kim demanded, stepping protectively between the old man and Manager Kim. She's our colleague. With a lazy flick of his finger, the old man sent Director Kim flying. Seo reacted instantly, lunging forward. He caught Director Kim midair, breaking the fall, but the impact sent both of them crashing harshly into the ground. Thanks, Deputy Manager Seo, Director Kim said, scrambling up unharmed. Seo didn't answer. Panicked, Director Kim helped him up, then froze in horror. The back of Seo's shirt was torn to shreds, revealing a raw, bloody injury from the impact. Seo, are you all right? Director Kim stammered. I'm fine. Seo managed, voice strained with pain. But the old man ignored them entirely. He walked straight to Manager Kim and tilted her chin up with 2 fingers. Child, he said, studying her intently. Let me take you as my disciple. You have no spiritual root, but I can awaken one for you. He murmured to himself, fascinated. I wonder what would happen if such a unique consciousness were to evolve into a cultivator's divine sense. Manager Kim's tears streamed down her face as she desperately looked towards Seo and Director Kim for help. The old man followed her gaze and scoffed. Still clinging to worldly attachments even after I offer to take you in. His eyes flashed with irritation. With a gesture, an invisible force seized Seo and Director Kim by the neck, lifting them into the air like rag dolls. They clawed at their throats, struggling to breathe. I will sever your worldly attachments for you, the old man said coldly to Manager Kim. Seeing her friends choking, Manager Kim broke down completely. Please stop, she begged, tears streaming down her face. I'll do anything you ask, just spare them. Then you must forget them, the old man commanded. I will. I understand, she sobbed. Satisfied, the old man released his grip. Seo and Director Kim dropped to the ground, gasping desperately for air. But leaving them here will only prolong your attachment, the old man mused. I shall return them to a mortal nation. He waved his hand, and a swirling vortex ripped open the space in front of them. Your colleagues will be scattered through this dimensional rift, he informed Manager Kim. Not even I will know where they land. The pull of the portal was immediate and overwhelming. Director Kim was sucked in before he could even understand what was happening. In the split second before Seo was dragged in, he lunged and grabbed the precious bundle of herbs he had collected. Then he too was gone. Manager Kim could only watch and sob as the portal snapped shut, plunging everything into silence. A moment later, sound rushed back, the din of a crowd, the shouts of vendors. Finest silks in all of Manhwa! Seo was the first to wake. He found himself and an unconscious Director Kim sprawled on the cobblestones of an alleyway. He staggered to his feet and peeked out into a bustling street filled with unfamiliar faces. Where am I? He wondered. This wasn't where he had landed in his first life. The old man had been telling the truth. Their destination was random. He stepped out of the alley, and a strange sense of déjà vu washed over him. His eyes drifted upward, and landed on a massive story pagoda dominating the skyline. Recognition slammed into him. He knew this place. He had lived here for years. This was Sukyang, the capital city of the Yenwen nation. After taking in the scene, he returned to the alley and roused Director Kim. Deputy Manager Seo. Director Kim groaned, exhausted and overwhelmed. I can't keep up with any of this anymore. Seo sat beside him. I feel the same way, he admitted. I wish this was all just a dream. It's just the two of us now, Director Kim murmured. But I guess we should be grateful we weren't taken by those monsters. Seo remained silent. Even with all his future knowledge, this was new territory. In his past life, he'd been nothing more than a powerless herb gatherer. He knew nothing about this new beginning. We can't stay here forever, Seo finally said. Let's get out of this alley. Director Kim nodded, and together they stepped onto the main street. Instantly, they became the center of attention. People pointed, whispered, and stared. Director Kim stiffened. What are they saying? He asked, unnerved. Why is everyone staring at us? They're saying our clothes look strange, Seo replied calmly. It sounds like Chinese, Director Kim muttered, shocked. Seo managed a faint smile. Don't worry. I know a bit of Chinese. Director Kim opened his mouth to ask another question, but when he noticed the bloody mess on Seo's back through his torn shirt, he shut it and simply said, It was a lie. Of course, the language here only resembled Chinese. The characters were similar, but the pronunciation was completely different. In his past life, Seo had endured 2 months of mockery from beggars just to learn the basics. This time, he didn't need to. He pulled out the massive roots he'd salvaged. Let's get some new clothes. Director Kim blinked. How? Our money won't work here. Seo didn't bother explaining. He simply led him straight to the city's largest medicine hall. The owner's eyes bulged at the sight of the herbs. Are you really selling something this precious? He stammered. Seo put on a serious expression. These yellow bamboo roots are at least 800 years old. Of course. The owner said quickly, hands trembling. These are worth at least 15 silver ingots. The amount made Director Kim's heart skip. Seo had never held that much money in his entire past life. Seo kept his composure. Then hurry up and pay us. Yes. The owner hurried to count out the silver. With their newfound wealth, they bought new clothes, and to Director Kim's astonishment, a small house. We're going to live here? He asked, stunned. Yes, Seo confirmed. And starting today, I'll teach you the language. Director Kim beamed, thanking him repeatedly. Seo acted calm, but after bribing officials for identity plaques and purchasing the house, they were left with just 1 silver ingot. The capital is expensive, Seo thought grimly. Later, Director Kim noticed the back of Seo's new shirt already soaked with blood. Seeing everything Seo had done for him, he hesitated, then gathered his courage. Since we're starting over in a new place, why don't you just call me by my name? Seo looked up, surprised. If you're okay with that. Director Kim smiled warmly. Thank you, Seo Eun-hyun. That night, after settling in, Seo laid the 2 remaining roots on the table. I sold 1 to get us started, he explained. But once these are gone, we'll have no income. We need to find a way to earn money. Director Kim stared at the roots, thinking hard. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Let's sell the others, he said. Use the silver to start a business. It was a solid plan. With their capital and Director Kim's business experience, they could definitely make a living. But Seo found himself thinking. Is making a living enough? I've regressed. Shouldn't I dream bigger? Seo knew Director Kim was a martial genius. In his past life, the man had become a master in months, using nothing but a third-rate manual. With proper guidance, he became one of the strongest men in the Jianghu. But what if? Seo realized. He learned advanced techniques from the very beginning? A slow smile crept across Seo's face. He could accelerate the birth of the world's greatest swordsman. And reap the benefits himself. Director Kim, Seo began. This world is called Murim. It's a world of martial arts. The words instantly snapped his friend to attention. If we start a business here, who knows when some gang might target us? Shouldn't we at least learn some self-defense? Director Kim's eyes lit up. Martial arts? He repeated, excitement creeping into his voice. But the sects don't teach outsiders. How would we even learn? Seo couldn't hide a grin. As a lifelong Murim novel geek, he knew exactly how to reel him in. This city has 7 major sects, Seo explained. On the orthodox side, you've got the demon-slaying sect, the self-binding temple, the suppressing birdhouse, and the 7 mysteries sect. On the unorthodox side, there's the Fawn Gang, the Dark Knight Association, and the dragon-fighting stronghold. He added, the orthodox are called the 4 stars. The unorthodox are the 3 demons. He continued, the demon-slaying sect focuses on sword and blade techniques. The self-binding temple is Buddhist. The suppressing birdhouse specializes in intelligence work. And the 7 mysteries sect teaches a bit of everything. As for the 3 demons, all anyone knows is they're masters of stealth and sorcery. Seo paused and asked, so which one do you like? Without a heartbeat of hesitation, Director Kim answered. The demon-slaying sect. A true martial artist wields a blade. A fitting choice for the man who would one day be known as the world's greatest swordsman. How do you even know all this? Director Kim asked, suddenly suspicious. Seo laughed it off. I overheard some martial artists talking earlier. Months later, after selling the last of their roots, they stood before the gates of the demon-slaying sect. A muscular guard blocked their path. What do you want? My older brother and I have heard of the sect's fame and wish to learn its martial arts, Seo said politely. The guard eyed their fine clothes and scoffed. He's a bit old to start learning, he said, gesturing at Director Kim. Seo discreetly pressed a silver coin into the guard's hand. Could we possibly speak with someone of higher status? Even simple self-defense training would be enough. The bribe worked. The guard led them inside to meet a sect elder. You wish to learn self-defense? The elder asked. We wish to learn the best you have to offer, Seo declared, placing a heavy box of silver on the table. The elder's eyes widened at the sight of the glittering nuggets. Very well, he conceded. One of you may join as an external disciple. He pocketed the silver and added, but we offer no special treatment for donations. Only one of you may be accepted. Seo was stunned. All that silver, enough to rival the value of a priceless bamboo root, just for one unsupported disciple slot. Director Kim looked outraged, ready to explode, but Seo cut him off. We accept, Seo said with a bow. My brother will be the one to learn. Director Kim stared at him, speechless. The elder instructed him to join the other external disciples in the training yard, then departed. As soon as he left, Director Kim turned sharply towards Seo. What's the point? If only I'm learning, doesn't that defeat the purpose? If I'd known it was this expensive, I would have chosen another sect. Don't worry about it, Seo replied gently. I was never good at sports anyway. I'll use the rest of our money to start a business and support you. You just focus on mastering the sword. Director Kim was floored by the sacrifice. I'll do my best, he said, though doubt colored his voice. I don't know if I can do it. Believe in yourself, Seo said with total confidence. You can. With a final grateful nod, Director Kim headed to the training yard. Months later, the demon-slaying sect was in an uproar. At an internal competition, an outsider, a man who had trained for only 7 months, had single-handedly defeated every one of their prized disciples. The sect elders watched from their platform, their expressions a mix of outrage and disbelief. Mastering martial arts required deep comprehension of core principles. Years of conditioning. A body molded and tempered through agony. Yet some talents were so monstrous they didn't climb the ladder. They soared. And now, in the greatest sect in Sukyong, filled with prodigies of every kind, an outsider had surpassed them all. In just 7 months, Director Kim had not only mastered their absolute dragon saber technique. He had become a first-rate warrior. The Grand Elder was livid. Becoming first-rate was supposed to be impossible without years, sometimes decades, of brutal training. For an outsider to achieve it after joining through a donation? Humiliating. It looked as though the sect's proud heritage had knelt before a single man. Furious, the Grand Elder ordered Director Kim's arrest. And now, Director Kim sat imprisoned in a guarded house, suspected of being a spy. And for some reason, Seo had been imprisoned with him. Aren't you worried? Seo asked, watching Director Kim calmly practicing sword forms inside the cell. Director Kim laughed. About what? About being accused of spying, Seo cried. In the novels, they destroy your chi core for this kind of thing. True, Director Kim admitted, pausing his practice. But for some reason, I feel like I'm about to break through another wall. If I can just push past it, I think I can reach the next stage. Seo stared at him, stunned. What kind of monster are you? You just became a first-rate warrior. How are you already close to the next level? The next stage was Martial Peak, a realm reserved for sect leaders and the strongest elders in all of Manhwa. Only 1,000 absolute masters had ever reached it. For all practical purposes, it was the final stage of martial arts. Seo's original prediction had been wrong. This wouldn't accelerate the birth of the world's greatest swordsman by 40 years. It would be closer to 30. 4 days they remained in captivity. Director Kim spent every waking moment meditating and practicing, sinking deeper into a state of razor-sharp focus. On the 7th day, it happened. The chi he'd gathered surged upward and manifested above his head, 3 glowing lotus flowers made of pure, pulsing energy. Seo stared, stunned. These were flower chi, a phenomenon only seen when a martial artist reached the absolute peak of a realm. Director Kim inhaled slowly. The lotus flowers dissolved into his body like drifting embers. He rose to his feet, power radiating from him in a tangible wave. I've crossed the barrier, he said, a confident smile spreading across his face. I'm not so afraid of the demon-slaying sex leader anymore. Seo let out a breathless laugh. Your talent is beyond anything I could have imagined. I'm impressed with myself too, Director Kim admitted. I never knew I had this in me. Maybe that's why I always loved martial arts novels. Just then, the door burst open. An elder stormed in, flanked by a squad of armed guards. Hear me! Kim Young-hoon and his comrade, he announced, unfurling a scroll. By order of the sect leader, we are to destroy the chi core of the spy who dared to steal the martial arts of the demon-slaying sect. Director Kim's expression hardened. Seo panicked. Wait, we're not spies, we were just... The elder struck him across the face, sending him stumbling. Silence! We have witnesses who heard you speaking in a strange coded language. He gestured sharply. Restrain them. But the guards never got the chance. Before the first one moved, Director Kim's sword flashed into his hand. In a burst of steel too fast to follow, the elder's sword hand was severed. His weapon clattered uselessly to the floor. The room froze. Director Kim pressed his blade against the elder's throat. "This is the first sect I've ever joined," he said, his voice cold as winter steel. "I am no spy." A guard lunged in desperation. But Director Kim moved first. He became a blur. In the span of seconds, every guard lay on the ground, clutching their severed or disabled hands, groaning in agony. The survivors scrambled away, screaming. "He's a peak-level master! Warn the sect leader!" Director Kim sheathed his blade with a smooth flick. "I'm going to visit the other sects," he said calmly amid the chaos. "What will you do?" "I'll go with you," Seo replied instantly. "Let's start with the dragon-fighting stronghold." Director Kim chuckled. "You go on ahead. I'll meet you there after I finish with the elders and their leader." A few hours later, Seo stood panting on the highest peak of the dragon-fighting stronghold. Director Kim was already there, leaning casually on his sword. "What took you so long?" he asked. "You're just too fast," Seo gasped. His eyes dropped to the blood dripping from Director Kim's blade. Memories flashed, Director Kim lecturing him about violence back on Earth. That felt like another lifetime. This world had changed them. Seo wished they could go back, not to the day they arrived in Nirim, but all the way back to their small, ordinary lives on Earth. If he ever regressed again, that's what he would wish for. But for now, survival came first. After the demon-slaying sect's betrayal, Director Kim conquered the dragon-fighting stronghold. Over the next years after that, he traveled across Yendu, defeating every major sect. By the third year, after shattering the emblems of all 7 houses, he was known nationwide as the greatest martial artist under the heavens. Using this fame, he unified the fractured martial world and formed the Martial Alliance. 7 years passed. Director Kim and Seo had become as close as blood brothers. One day, Director Kim presented Seo with a custom martial arts manual. "This is the Severing Mountain Sword," he said. "I created it for you. I hope you'll inherit a will strong enough to cut down mountains. If you master this, you can reach martial peak." Seo was stunned. The manual, even containing the Dragon Vein Chi method, was a true first-rate art, far beyond anything he had ever imagined. He began practicing immediately. And immediately, failed. Every time, he ended up flat on the ground before he even understood how. "You really have no talent," Director Kim sighed. He wasn't wrong. Even with a personalized technique from the world's strongest man and daily one-on-one guidance, Seo barely scraped his way to third-rate after an entire year. "It can't be helped," Seo finally admitted. "At least I have some talent for medicine. Everyone's good at something, I guess." Then, a decade after their arrival, Seo witnessed a miracle. As Director Kim meditated, 5 spheres of pure chi, like radiant flowers, bloomed above his head. Seo's breath caught. This was the legendary 5 energies converging to the origin. A massive wave of internal energy exploded outward from Director Kim's body. Bone cracked. Joints shifted. His white hair darkened to black. The transformation was divine, power so immense Seo couldn't even stand near him. When the radiance waned, Seo stared, speechless. Before him stood a young man. Director Kim, decades younger. "What's so surprising?" the young Director Kim asked, his voice vibrant and fresh. "Brother?" Seo stammered, staring at the man in front of him. You look younger than me." Director Kim only laughed, a sound so full of life it practically vibrated through the room. "Impressive, isn't it? This is skeletal restructuring. A true rebirth." Seo shook his head, still dazed. "The world is going to lose its mind when they see you." "Certainly," Director Kim agreed as he tugged on his robes, admiring how they hung on his renewed frame. Then he stepped toward Seo, expression settling into something somber. "It's about time I handed the Martial Alliance to its next leader." Seo exhaled. He knew Kim was right. The leader needed to be a true master, and yet, no matter how many disciples trained under them, none seemed to grasp the essence of martial arts the way Kim did. "That's because you're an anomaly," Seo said with a grin. "Where else would you find a freakish genius like you?" Director Kim didn't answer. His gaze drifted out to the courtyard, where disciples swung their blades in synchronized arcs. "Even so, we still have to find someone." Years passed. Seo now sat alone in a quiet room, guiding a brush across paper. His hair had turned gray, a soft reminder of how long he'd lived this second life. It had been years since Director Kim's miraculous transformation, and nearly as long since Seo had last seen him. A year after his rebirth, Director Kim had stepped down as Alliance leader. Seo had wanted to retire with him, but the martial world was spiraling into chaos. So he'd stayed, strategizing, negotiating, stabilizing, for far longer than he ever intended. Director Kim had claimed he wanted to wander the world. And he did. He disappeared so thoroughly he hadn't even shown up for Seo's retirement ceremony. Now Seo wandered out of his oversized retirement home, craving a breath of fresh air. The quiet pressed in on him, too deeply for comfort. The place was meant for families, for bustling disciples, for noise, not one aging strategist living alone. A sharp rustle snapped him out of his thoughts. "Who's there?" Seo called, instincts sharpened. He edged closer to the bushes, and froze. A gaunt figure stepped out, clothes in tatters, face smeared with dirt and exhaustion. Director Kim. "What in the world?" Seo grabbed him by the shoulders. "What's with the beggar rags? Why didn't you come to my retirement? Where have you been all this time?" Director Kim answered with a thin, tired laugh before collapsing onto the grass. Seo knelt beside him. "Did something happen?" Kim stared up at the sky for a long moment, then spoke. "I really thought I was a martial genius, company. Isn't that what you always told me? If I'm not a genius, then what am I?" He sat up, a bitter smile cutting across his youthful face. "I am a martial genius. At least in this kingdom, among ordinary people like us, no one can match me." "Ordinary?" Seo scoffed. "How are you ordinary? Everyone under the heavens calls you the #1 martial artist in the world." "I fought them," Kim said suddenly. His voice dropped into something dark and heavy. "The cultivators. Do you remember them, Seo? The monsters who took our friends so long ago?" Of course Seo remembered. He'd lived that nightmare twice. The cultivators, the hidden puppeteers of the Engu kingdom. As the martial alliance became stronger, their interference had grown bolder. Kim had refused to drag the alliance into a suicidal war, so he stepped down and hunted them alone. "They were impossible to find," Kim continued. "And when I finally caught one, he'd just laugh at me. Say I wasn't worth his time. Then vanish with some trick illusion." His hands trembled. "But 5 years ago, I finally got my fight. You won, right?" Seo leaned in, holding his breath. "I did," Kim confirmed. Seo let out a relieved laugh. "If you'd pulled this reckless nonsense while still alliance leader, I'd have dragged you back by the collar myself." But Kim's expression only darkened. "He was in the chi condensation realm." Seo blinked. "That's the lowest realm, isn't it?" Kim nodded. "I fought with everything I had. My full strength. And I barely managed to scratch his fingertip." The words slammed into Seo like a hammer. "He said if I could graze his body, he'd count it as my win." Kim muttered. "So technically, yes. I won." But his voice carried the weight of a man who'd just witnessed the limits of his entire life's pursuit. "Was he one of their grandmasters?" Seo asked, trying to make sense of it. "No." Kim's voice barely rose above a whisper. "He said his realm was the second lowest in the entire cultivation world. In our terms, he was a second-rate warrior." Seo's breath caught. "What nonsense!" Kim's martial arts were practically divine. He could walk on air, slice through ancient steel like tofu, crush boulders with his bare hands. And yet, he could only scratch a beginner cultivator? "I was a frog in a well," Kim murmured. "We can never stand against them, Seo. They're walking natural disasters." Seo felt cold sweat bead on his back. Then Kim reached into his tattered clothes and pulled out something Seo did not expect. A severed hand. "Today, though," Kim's lips twisted into a grim smile. "I took his wrist." Hope surged through Seo. "Then, doesn't that mean you surpassed him?" "No." Kim stood, shoulders sagging. "He just slapped a talisman on the stump and grew a new hand." Seo's hope died on the spot. "It seems my martial path ends here," Kim said quietly. "What do you mean?" Seo asked, heart dropping. "I came to say goodbye." Kim let out a hollow laugh. "He said he respected my willpower. He offered to bring me into his sect." Seo straightened. "To become a cultivator? An immortal?" I asked. Kim said with a faint, rueful smile. "But they said it's impossible without spiritual roots. To reach immortality, one must be born with the 5-element spiritual root, the natural equivalent of reaching the stage of 5 energies converging to the origin right from birth." Director Kim sighed softly before explaining. "We spend our entire lives trying to manifest the basic quality they're simply born with." Then, without another word, he lifted his sword. With one smooth, fluid motion, the blade carved through the very fabric of space itself, a shimmering doorway unfurling in the air like a rip in reality. "I'm going now," he said, stepping toward the glowing portal. "I have to aim for a higher stage." Just before crossing through, he held out a book to Seo. "My last gift to you. Stay safe." And then he was gone. Seo stared at the book in his hands. Record of transcending cultivation and exhausting martial arts. A journal documenting one man's struggle to surpass gods purely through will. His eyes lingered on the empty space where Director Kim had stood not even seconds ago. "Where are you going without me?" he whispered. But only silence answered. The decades drifted by. Many long years after arriving in this world, Seo lay on his deathbed, defeated not by battle, poison, or cultivation backlash, but by a simple common cold. Just like the first time, fate took him in the most mundane way possible. No matter how fiercely a man fought, he could never outrun it. In the end, the only difference was the quality of his house and the softness of his bed. He died on the exact same day as before. Seo had lived this second life to its fullest, desperate to avoid the regrets that once haunted him. He had been too busy even to consider marriage. He had unified the martial sect of Yengu, and tasted every bit of fame and wealth a mortal man could hope for. But still, a hollow emptiness echoed inside him. If we had just struggled a little harder, he wondered. Could we have reached the sky together? His body trembled with a sense of utter powerlessness. The regret was overwhelming. And so ended Seo's second regression. Moments after dying for the second time, Seo's eyes, which had gone blurry only seconds earlier, opened wide once more. He looked around to find himself back in the same forest on the ascension path. His body hummed with overflowing energy. Regression wasn't a one-time miracle. It was repeating. As he tried to make sense of it, Section Chief John suddenly came charging toward him, shouting furiously, "Deputy Manager Seo, you bastard!" John swung a hand to slap him, but Seo instinctively dodged. John kept throwing punches, each one easier for Seo to avoid than the last. He wasn't even paying attention to the man. His mind was consumed with one thought. Why did I regress again? A brand new body full of energy should have been a blessing, but what about everything he had built over all those years? Meanwhile, John was wearing himself out, still hurling accusations and complaining that Seo had almost gotten them all killed, and now he had the nerve to dodge. Seo didn't answer. Is this really a good thing? He wondered. He already knew the truth. It wasn't. This was a curse that denied the meaning of life itself. A couple of regressions might feel lucky, but if it continued forever, Seo would be trapped, endlessly suffering, endlessly repeating, unable to escape the wheel of fate. Worse, he would never again meet the real people he had known and cared for. These faces around him were only echoes, people wearing the skin of those he once loved. Director Kim, the man he had seen as an older brother, no longer existed in this world. As John finally tired himself out with useless punches, Director Kim intervened sharply. That's enough. Seo told John to calm down. What help will being angry bring here? The words only infuriated John further. He called Seo shameless. But before he could rant more, Seo cut in. In the first place, John, you were on driving duty today. I already warned you that I hadn't slept because of the work you offloaded onto me. You forced me to drive anyway. Seo stood, his voice steady. How would I have dodged an incoming avalanche on a narrow road? He told John to stop pointing fingers and focus on what they needed to do now. The man fell silent, stunned. He was used to Seo always apologizing. Seo turned toward Director Kim and, out of old habit, nearly called him by name. He caught himself instantly and corrected it. He told Director Kim he would look for a place to stay before sunset and instructed everyone else to search for the car or any possible way out of the forest. When the sunset arrives, I'll light the fire, Seo said. Come to it. Seo no longer cared about pleasing anyone. No more relationship building. Deep down, he knew the truth. What was the point of bonding with people who would vanish again? In the end, he would always be alone. As the sun dipped below the trees, Seo lit the fire. The others eventually returned. They saw the glow and found Seo sitting beside it. The rest fell asleep one by one, but Seo stayed awake, his eyes wide, trembling with fear. Fear of endless regression. Fear of an infinite loop. Fear of never escaping. He prayed the ability could be removed. Perhaps if he returned to Earth, maybe then the cycle would end. But every regression returned him to this same moment on the ascension path. And he still didn't know how to go home. He recalled the old cultivator's warning, when the ascension gate opens, nearby spaces destabilize. Ordinary humans could be swept into spatial storms. If the ascension gate truly existed, then maybe that was how they had fallen into this world. And maybe, just maybe, the gate could take them back. But first, Seo needed strength. Real strength. As an ordinary mortal, he could accomplish nothing. He needed to become a cultivator like Director Kim, to gain longevity, to study the ascension gate, to find a way home. That night, Seo stepped out of the cave. He looked up at the sky, and with quiet determination, made his decision. He would become a cultivator. He would reach the ascension gate. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the trees, Seo ventured into the forest. He returned to the exact place where he had once found the 1,000-year-old ginseng. He dug up as many as he could, and began eating them one after another without stopping. As Seo devoured the ginseng, powerful tremors rippled through his core. In his previous life, he hadn't known any heart methods, so eating these yellow bamboo roots would have been useless. But now, using the Dragon Vein Chi method Director Kim had created for him, he could finally force open the blocked Chi passageways. His heart, once heavily polluted and sluggish, slowly began to purify. Each beat grew clearer, closer to the rhythm it had when he was first born. Sweat poured down Seo's body as he cultivated. Healing a body ruined by preservatives, fast food, and years of stress wasn't easy. But he didn't stop. He refused to stop. After finishing the ginseng, Seo went to train his body. He found a tree branch and carefully carved it with rocks until it resembled a sword. It was crude, uneven, barely more than a stick, but to Seo, it would do. He began swinging it, letting his muscles recall the movements he'd trained in his past life under Director Kim. He remembered the footwork, the weight shifts, the angle of the blade. Back then, he'd only been an average second-rate martial artist. Near the end of his life, he'd barely practiced at all, so his skills had dulled. But he wasn't helpless. He stepped forward and swung the wooden sword at a nearby tree, performing the Severing Mountain Sword first form. Despite the crude weapon, the tree shook as the blade bit deep into its bark. His martial arts were still all inside him. Improving from here was only a matter of time. What Seo didn't realize was that someone had witnessed everything from the trees. Director Kim. Utterly stunned, Kim stepped closer and called out. "What was that just now?" He hurried over, staring at the damaged tree. "How did you slash a tree with a wooden stick? Just what is that strength?" Seo couldn't help smiling inwardly at Kim's excitement. This is the man who will guide me to become a cultivator, he thought. Seo turned to him and asked if he wanted to learn the technique. Director Kim's face lit up. "Can I really do it?" But before Seo could answer, the tree behind him suddenly exploded. A massive presence appeared, destroying it in one strike. The nine-tailed fox. Its eyes burned with fury as it snarled. "Filthy humans! How dare you play around in front of the master of this forest?" Director Kim froze, stunned. And Seo, despite everything, felt terror twist through him. He had forgotten about the nine-tailed fox. In his second life, the fox had bitten his arm off without mercy. Seo had endured the pain only by pressing on an acupoint to numb it. In both his first and second lives he had been weak. Pathetically weak. But now, in his third life, Seo took a deep breath and walked toward the fox. Everyone behind him panicked, shouting for him to stop. But Seo didn't. Even now, he still didn't understand how his second life had ended the way it did. He had sworn to become a cultivator, to reach the stage of 5 energies converging to the origin. Yet despite training under the best master for over 100 years, he had barely achieved the level of a second-rank warrior. He grabbed one arm with the other, and severed it himself. Gasps erupted behind him. Terror spread like wildfire. Seo held out the severed arm to the nine-tailed fox. Because he knew, better than anyone gathered there, that compared to true cultivators, his talent was trash. And if it took 1,000 years or more, he would not give up again. The fox laughed coldly. "Human, you know your place. You know how to offer yourself as a sacrifice." Then it accepted the arm and ate it. Seo silently vowed, "I'll offer my arm as many times as it takes until the day I surpass you." After finishing its meal, the nine-tailed fox allowed them to stay, then vanished. Seo didn't concern himself with the others. He went to a quiet clearing and continued swinging his sword. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He didn't rest. He only swung. After a few days, cultivators arrived, healed his arm, and escorted his colleagues away. But Seo stayed in the forest, practicing. He only stopped on the 4th day because a new presence appeared. The Sea Dragon King. Seo immediately bowed with respect. This lowly mortal dares to ask the Sea Dragon King a question. Seeing Seo's humility, the Sea Dragon King allowed him to speak. Seo asked, "It seems the Sea Dragon King wishes to take Miss O. But Miss O is just an ordinary person without spiritual roots. Ordinary humans cannot live longer than 100 years. So, what are your intentions toward her?" The Sea Dragon King laughed. "You are quite an observant mortal, one who understands the condition of cultivators well." Then he added, "Do not worry. Once Miss O accepts my blood, she will awaken spiritual roots suitable for her." Seo was surprised by the Sea Dragon King's words and quickly asked if perhaps he could give the rest of them a chance as well. Since Miss O was from the same hometown, maybe they too possessed some hidden ability. The Sea Dragon King smiled faintly and said, "Listen carefully." Before Seo could react, an overwhelming pressure slammed down on his chest. He collapsed to the ground, gasping. I will say one thing out of concern. The Sea Dragon King continued. Do not carelessly express your opinions to a high-ranking cultivator like me. We have lived for hundreds, even thousands of years. We see what mortals cannot see. We know what mortals do not know. His eyes glowed an eerie green as he stared at Seo. You have a good temperament, so I will overlook this. But there are cruel ones who, just because your eyes meet theirs, would tear you apart like an insect. With that warning, the Sea Dragon King walked out of the cave with Miss O, transformed into his dragon form, and soared into the sky. Director Kim was completely shocked after seeing the dragon's true form. The next day, as the weather cleared and everyone stepped out of the cave, they encountered the old cultivator riding a mechanical lion. Seo stepped forward, greeted him, and asked respectfully, Our colleague Miss Kim is just an ordinary person without spiritual roots. How could she possibly become your disciple? The old cultivator laughed. Then he pulled out an elixir, explaining that it was extremely precious, able to open spiritual channels. If taken, even an ordinary person might gain the chance to become immortal. Seo was stunned. Another way to become a cultivator actually existed. The old cultivator explained further, mortals could obtain the 5 elements spiritual root by pushing their martial arts to the absolute extreme, but that path took far too long and the results were mediocre. So using elixirs was far more reliable. After explaining everything, the old cultivator opened a portal leading to the mortal world. He waved dismissively and said that both Seo and Director Kim were now useless to him, so they should leave. Seo and Director Kim were sucked into the portal, while Miss Kim screamed and watched them disappear. Seo lost consciousness. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself hanging from a tree branch high above the ground. Ahead was a vast forest with buildings in the distance. Recognizing the scenery, Seo realized he had landed in the southwestern region of the Yengu Kingdom, a place he knew well from his second regression. After traveling the kingdom with Director Kim for more than 100 years, there were few places unfamiliar to him. Seo climbed down from the tree and woke Director Kim. After explaining everything, Kim looked flustered, but after all they had been through, he accepted most of it. A few days later, they reached the nearby city of Hobiak. There, they sold herbal medicines brought from the Immortal Ascending village and purchased a house. Seo began teaching Director Kim how to read and write the local language, as well as how to use the Severing Mountain Blade technique, the very technique Kim had originally created in the second regression. Seo even modified it to better fit the weapon Kim now used. But as Seo watched Kim train, a quiet disappointment settled in his chest. Director Kim reached the Three Blossoms Flower realm only 3 months after starting martial arts. Meanwhile, Seo had spent 2 entire lifetimes just to barely reach first-rate level. After reaching peak level, Director Kim grew excited and declared, If it's now, I think I could even beat you. Seo smiled faintly. The man in front of him wasn't the same older brother he once followed in his previous life. This Director Kim was mentally far younger. In terms of years lived, Seo was old enough to be his grandfather. So Seo decided he shouldn't stay with him this time. He handed Director Kim several martial arts scrolls and the exhausting record of transcending, the book Kim himself had created in his previous life. Seo told him, gently but firmly, that from today onward he would be going his own way. Director Kim was stunned. What do you mean by that? Did I do something wrong? Is that why you're leaving? What is the reason? Seo hesitated. Memory surfaced, from his first regression, when Director Kim became Martial Alliance leader but fell into despair after losing to the cultivators. And again in the second regression, when Director Kim developed the record of transcending cultivation and exhausting martial arts, and even fought the cultivators, only to be defeated by someone even stronger. Eventually, overwhelmed and heartbroken, he chose to abandon martial arts entirely and disappear. Seo feared this life would end the same way, and he didn't want to watch his older brother fall into despair again. So he lied gently, telling Director Kim he wanted to travel alone to improve his skills. Director Kim desperately asked, Can't you do that with me? How am I supposed to live without you? Seo answered softly that with his current martial arts level, Director Kim would be more than fine. He reminded him that he had already taught him how to speak, write, and practice martial arts. Now that Director Kim had become a top expert, Seo felt there was nothing left to worry about. But Director Kim still didn't seem convinced. Do I really have to be separated from my hometown friends again? He asked quietly. Seo was surprised by the question. After a moment, he told him, Starting today, let's meet here once every 10 years. Only then did Director Kim finally agree. After comforting the lonely Director Kim, Seo left the house. Some time later, a disciple of the Hall of 8 Respected Pavilion stepped outside and asked, What's this commotion in front of the Hall of 8 Respected Pavilion? The person he asked was Seo. Seo greeted him and replied calmly that he had come to request a duel at the pavilion. The disciple laughed. This pavilion isn't a place that just anyone can show up to. But before he could finish, Seo drew his sword. With one swift motion, he slashed downward, cutting through the disciple's blade as if it were dried bamboo. The clean strike shocked everyone around them. Seo sheathed his sword and asked evenly, "Do I still look like a nobody to you?" His mind was made up. He would become stronger, no matter what. After challenging the pavilion and breaking one of their disciples' weapons, Seo was immediately welcomed inside. A girl arrived to escort him. She bowed politely and said the sect leader was waiting for him in the inner quarters. Seo followed her to an arena surrounded by rows of disciples from the Hall of Eight Respect Pavilion. The sect leader stood at the center, smiling. "I was curious who this first-rate master would be, only to find such a young junior." Seo bowed deeply. "This humble one, Seo Eunhyun, greets the sect leader of the Hall of Eight Respect." The sect leader laughed, praising Seo's extraordinary energy. Seo returned the courtesy, praising the sect leader's presence and asking for guidance. Without hesitation, the sect leader drew his weapon, a spear whip that glinted with deadly flexibility. "Then I shall begin first." Seo drew his sword. The sect leader moved first, lightning fast, aiming at Seo's legs. Seo dodged instantly. But the attack was only a feint. As Seo leapt into the air, the sect leader infused energy into his spear whip and launched a second strike, this time aiming for Seo's head. Seo reacted the moment the energy flickered, swinging his sword with blinding speed and deflecting the attack. Gasps erupted from the disciples. Their sect leader's spear whip, blocked by a sword? The sect leader narrowed his eyes, impressed. "Young warrior, you've achieved the state of becoming one with the sword. You've reached the late stage of first rate." Seo returned the compliment humbly, acknowledging that the sect leader had completely merged with martial arts. He added that their exchange had granted him insight into a new technique. The sect leader laughed again. "To reach my level at such a young age, Seo, you truly are a genius." Seo laughed inwardly. To him, being called a genius wasn't praise at all. Yes, it might seem shocking for someone who appeared to be in his late 20s to reach such a level, one that usually required decades, but he knew the truth. He smiled gratefully and thanked the sect leader for complimenting his insufficient talent. In reality, Seo believed he was just one of countless mediocre idiots. Heaven had not granted him talent. But through regression, he had forced his martial arts to a level comparable to a natural-born genius. Regression, perhaps that is both my curse and my opportunity, Seo thought. And with that realization, he decided he would become a genius, by force. Seo pointed his sword at the sect leader and declared he would now use sword energy. The sect leader nodded and replied that he too would go all out. Seo launched forward, unleashing the first move of the mountain's severing sword art. The sect leader swiftly dodged to the right, avoiding the attack. But Seo didn't give him a chance to counter. He immediately transitioned into the second move, entering the mountain, attacking from below. The sect leader blocked with his spear whip and stepped back. Seo charged again, using the third move, ascending the vein. The sect leader blocked once more, then stepped back and infused energy into his weapon. He counterattacked in a flurry, launching strikes from multiple angles to overwhelm Seo. But Seo didn't falter. He blocked everyone. The sect leader's shock deepened. What is this monstrous sword art that I can't break through? He aimed once more at Seo's legs, trying to break his balance, but Seo leapt over the sweep effortlessly. While still midair, Seo used the seventh move of the mountain's severing sword art, Deep Mountain, and shot toward the sect leader with incredible speed. To the crowd, it looked as if Seo were wielding 1,000 swords at once. The sect leader couldn't predict the trajectory. He barely managed to dodge, but still ended up with a shallow cut on his cheek. Gasps erupted from the disciples. "This can't be! He cut the sect leader!" Seo's sword speed was rising with every move. Then Seo unleashed the 11th form, destroying the ground. The sect leader jumped back, narrowly dodging again. But the disciples were horrified. Seo's power wasn't just fast, it was growing. Seo charged once more, this time with an energy-infused strike. The sect leader met it head-on, channeling his own energy into the spear whip. The collision released a massive burst of energy. The shockwave rippled across the arena, scattering dust and rocks. After taking Seo's attack head-on, the sect leader's hand began to tremble uncontrollably. Seeing this, Seo decided it was time to end the fight. He leapt high into the sky, rising above the arena, and unleashed the 12th move, Seven Lights Emerging Peak. The sect leader braced himself, gathering his strength for a counterattack. But Seo's energy-infused sword struck with overwhelming force and speed. The moment blade met metal, the sect leader's spear whip shattered into thousands of pieces, scattering like sparks across the arena. Everyone froze. Not only the sect leader, but every disciple of the Hall of Eight Respected Pavilions stared in disbelief. Sio's attack hadn't just destroyed the spear whip, it had cut the sect leader's hand as well. Clutching his injured hand in pain, the sect leader bowed his head and admitted defeat. Sio immediately sheathed his sword and respectfully greeted him, saying it had been an invaluable experience. Then he left the arena. The battleground behind him was in ruins. After defeating the sect leader of the Hall of Eight Respected Pavilion, Sio walked out through the gates. The disciples watched him in silent awe. It had been a clean, honorable duel. Sio remembered that the Hall of Eight Respected was known, even in his past life, as a righteous sect that never employed cowardly tricks. Inspired, he decided his next destination would be a demonic sect. Through these martial duels, Sio vowed, "In this life, I must reach the peak realm." Time passed. Sio visited 4 more minor sects in Sukyang. He lost 2 duels at Yunryu and Wayang sect, but won against Geiju and Yukwil. Now, he finally arrived at Hojing sect. There, he fought one of their warriors, cutting through the warrior's blade and sending him flying with a single blow. The man crashed beside the sect master, knocked unconscious by Sio's overwhelming strike. The sect leader of Hojing roared with laughter. "So the young first-rate master who's been challenging sects all across Sukyang was you after all." He grinned. "I've witnessed your skills well." Sio bowed respectfully, saying he too had learned a lot. Just then, many warriors emerged from the doors behind the sect leader. The sect leader turned back to Sio with a smirk. "Are you ready? It's the elder's turn now." Sio blinked. "What is this? Is this how demonic sects operate?" He frowned. "Didn't the duel end with my victory? I've never heard of continuous battles or a one-on-one duel suddenly becoming this." The sect leader smirked deeper. "Really? Well, now you've heard it." Only then did Sio realize the sect leader was playing with words. Trying to intimidate him, Sio warned, "If I publicly reveal today's cowardice to the other sects, Hojing's reputation will plummet." But the sect leader only laughed. "I don't care. You'll get injured in this duel, the wound will get infected, and you'll die of tetanus." He explained that the world would believe Hojing had taken great care of him, and that despite their best efforts, Sio had died. As the elders stepped forward, raising their swords, the sect leader added, "How can a dead man spread a different rumor? These people are even worse than I expected," Sio thought. "Absolute lunatics." The elders pointed their swords at him from every direction. The sect leader announced that killing Sio here would not damage their reputation. It was clearly dangerous. But Sio smiled. This was exactly why he had come. He drew his sword and declared he would accept this absurd duel. The elders charged in. Thus began a true battle. As the sun set, the streets of the city brightened with lanterns. People filled inns and taverns, drinking, laughing, and sharing rumors. At one table, a drunk man slurred. "I heard the young master who's been challenging every sect went to fight Hojing today. Poor guy. What a waste of talent." His friend nodded. "Challenging an illegal organization like that? It's basically suicide." A third man chimed in. "That's youth for you. Thinking the world bends to your will. Innocent, in a way." A man from a nearby table scoffed. "He relied too much on his skill and acted recklessly. Brought about his own death. Hojing looks like a sect, but it's just a den of bandits. He's probably buried already." Just then, the inn door creaked open. A man stepped inside. His shoes soaked in blood. The waiter turned to greet him, and froze. It was Sio. His entire body was smeared with blood, dotted with cuts and wounds. Sio spoke calmly, as if he had just returned from a stroll. "1 bowl of noodles." Silence swept across the inn. The waiter swallowed hard and gestured shakily. Please, this way." Sio walked past the tables. One by one, every patron lowered their head. Not a single person dared meet his eyes. His expression was terrifying. Fury simmered beneath the calm. He was furious at the maniacs of Hojing. Furious at how close he'd come to dying. It hadn't been one-on-one. They had poisoned their weapons. They had attacked him from behind. They had fought without honor. If not for his knowledge of top-tier medicine, from his years as the Martial Alliance's strategist, he would have died. The antidotes and stimulants he carried were the only reason he survived. He killed every elder. But just before the battle ended, the crazed old sect leader gave one final, desperate order. "All disciples, kill him! Kill him no matter what!" Soon, a swarm of foot soldiers flooded the area, spears raised, arrows drawn, battle formation tight. Sio fought like a beast. No technique. No form. Just pure survival instinct. Even so, he endured. He severed the tendons of survivors to prevent revenge. Then he finished it. He killed the sect leader. Now seated at the table, Sio looked at his trembling hand, perhaps from the stimulants. The tension wouldn't fade. He sighed. Sleep would not come for days. Grabbing his sword, he understood what he had to do next: challenge another orthodox sect. After finishing his bowl of noodles, he stood and walked out of the inn, revealing a long, bleeding cut across his back. No one said a word. They only stared. The young master who survived the slaughter at Hojang had calmly eaten a bowl of noodles, and then left for another duel. That crazy young man quickly became the talk of the entire city. And so, Sukyong's city buzzed with excitement. People began calling him by a new name everywhere, in taverns, on streets, inside martial halls. The infinite fighting spirit, Seo Eun-hyun. Seo continued fighting relentlessly. He knew he had no talent, and he knew the peak he sought was unimaginably far. That was exactly why he had to fight over and over again, stepping across the boundaries of life and death. A man without talent, he believed, must go mad to break past the wall blocking him. If there was no talent, then madness would fill the void. That was the only way a dullard could chase a genius. And so Seo scoured Sukyong's city, then traveled across the various regions of Yeonju, engaging in duels multiple times a day. Orthodox sects, evil sects, it didn't matter. Like that, years passed. One day, a sudden explosion erupted in front of a house. Seo shot into the sky and unleashed the 14th form of his Severing Mountain sword art, Flowing Heart. It drew in the energy of nature itself, solid as a mountain, and vast as the heavens. But even as he summoned it, Seo struggled. The form, a sword thread technique usable only upon reaching the pinnacle realm, put immense strain on his mind just from briefly manifesting it. But Seo knew, if it wasn't done like this, he would never catch up. Suddenly, a black figure appeared behind him, launching a surprise attack. Seo spun, blocking with his sword, but the force was overwhelming. Cracks spread through his blade. The strike blasted him out of the sky, sending him crashing through a wall and blowing a hole straight through it. With just one hit, all of Seo's sword energy was shattered. The figure laughed as he walked toward Seo. Your reputation precedes you. I had high hopes, but you're still clumsy, young master, the infinite fighting spirit. The smoke cleared. Seo's eyes widened. It was Director Kim, the man once known as the greatest under heaven, Kim Young-hoon. Seo stood, impressed. You've gotten even stronger than last year. He wasn't exaggerating. Director Kim had transformed completely in just a few years. Seo looked at the sword marks on his own hands, and a bitter realization struck him. What have I been doing these past years? His realm was still stuck at top tier. Talent was cruel. Cruel enough to make a man feel miserable. Once things calmed, Seo asked, Why are you here, Director Kim? Didn't we agree to meet every 10 years? Director Kim answered, After reaching the realm of 5 energies converging to the origin and visiting the great sect of Yeonju, I've realized something. Seo listened closely. There's no one left above me in all of Yeonju. Not a single person can take one of my moves, Director Kim said bluntly. So I'm planning to establish a new sect or organization. And I want to offer you a seat. Seo immediately declined. I'm comfortable where I am. Looking at Director Kim, Seo thought to himself that he was still obsessed with becoming a martial alliance leader. Seo knew that accepting the offer would mean becoming a strategist, or vice leader again, working himself to death. And with his limited talent, every minute mattered. Director Kim warned, Once I establish it, meeting again might be difficult. He tried persuading Seo further. You could still stick around. Join me for some guidance duels. But Seo refused again. No matter what you offer, he said firmly, I won't accept. Director Kim looked deeply saddened. The offer had been sincere, well meant. But Seo had already received enough of his teachings in a previous life. What he needed now wasn't guidance, it was real battle experience. In Seo's past life, Director Kim once told him, after reaching the late stages of first rate, experience real combat. So this time, Seo chose to follow that advice, to observe Director Kim's saga from afar, while continuing his own endless search for battle. Years passed again. One rainy day, Director Kim returned to the old house where they used to meet. He pushed the creaky door open and stepped inside. You look pale, he said. Seo was already waiting. Age had caught up to him. His hair had grayed. His face was covered with countless scars, cuts, and marks. But above all, his expression was heavy, sorrowful, and worn. After years of fighting and failing to break through, Seo had finally accepted the truth. His talent was one abandoned by the heavens. Seo sat cross-legged on a mat, gripping the hilt of a glowing blue sword. Despite the endless hours he'd poured into training, frustration flickered across his expression. From across the room, Director Kim watched him. His long hair was tied neatly, and his gaze was sharp. Have you still not broken through to the next realm? He asked. Seo tightened his grip on the glowing sword. His eyes burned with determination, but also with the weight of failure. He understood that his grasp of sword energy surpassed most others. Yet he still couldn't withstand more than 3 moves from high-rank masters. Director Kim rubbed his chin thoughtfully, brow furrowing. How strange, he murmured. He observed Seo more closely, the way he now moved as one with his sword, far more in tune than in the past. With this much combat experience, he should have broken through already. Yet he hadn't. A faint, self-mocking smile curved Seo's lips as sweat trickled down his face. This is my talent, he thought bitterly. Blood dripped from his nose. His smile turned faint, tight, painful. In his heart, he acknowledged the cruel truth. He possessed a talent the heavens themselves had discarded. Seo's grip tightened, knuckles pale. His expression strained as more blood trickled from his nose. Half a day. That was his limit. If only he could sustain his sword chi effortlessly from dawn till dusk without faltering. Perhaps then he might finally catch a glimpse of the path forward. Seo's grip tightened on his sword. His expression strained. Blood trickled from his nose. Half a day, that was his limit. If only he could maintain his sword chi from sunrise to sunset, maybe then he would see the breakthrough he had chased his entire life. Director Kim stepped closer and handed Seo a thick, red-bound book. His tone was sincere, almost solemn, as he expressed his hope for Seo's success while passing it over. Seo sat reading the red-bound book, brows furrowed as he flipped through its densely written pages. Director Kim explained that it contained insights he had gleaned from his recent battle with cultivators. By enduring their spells and dragging the fight out as long as humanly possible, he had managed to survive and escape. Seo weighed the heavy book in his hands. It felt nearly as substantial as the main volume of the record of martial arts surpassing through cultivation and leaps, the evolved version of the record of transcending cultivation and exhausting martial arts. With a doubtful expression, he asked Director Kim whether he had truly gained so much insight from nothing more than successfully escaping. Standing in the doorway, lightning crackling behind him, Director Kim answered with a grave tone. To him, cultivators were natural disasters in human form. Escaping from such beings was no small feat, and the insight gained from such survival was immeasurable. Seo assured him that he would keep the book safe and pass it down to future generations. Director Kim nodded with genuine gratitude. Thank you, Eun-hyun. Standing at the building's entrance, sword in hand, Director Kim looked out into the raging storm. He declared his intention to seek out the cultivators once more. His voice was steady, even with the danger ahead, and a faint, grim smile formed on his lips. He added that he hoped the two of them would still be alive the next time they met. Before leaving, Director Kim turned back to Seo with a final piece of advice for reaching the peak realm. Seo needed to engrave every scene and every space he passed through, deeply, permanently, never letting those impressions fade. Seo's eyes widened as he processed the words. Almost in disbelief, he repeated them aloud. Engrave all the scenery? Director Kim elaborated. During battles or sparring sessions, a fighter instinctively memorizes the terrain. But what he was suggesting was far beyond that, turning such awareness into second nature, something Seo would maintain constantly, not just in combat. Seo stared in disbelief. Maintaining sword chi alone felt like his skull was about to explode, and now he had to maintain perfect spatial awareness on top of that. The thought felt impossible. Pressure built violently in Seo's mind, the weight of the task pressing on his very limits. If this keeps up, will my head explode? He wondered. But Seo shook his head firmly. Director Kim wouldn't give meaningless advice. There had to be purpose behind the hardship. From that day on, Seo embraced a new discipline. He committed himself to remembering every space that entered his sight. Every corner. Every sound. Every shift in his surroundings. Slowly, painstakingly, he trained his mind to retain everything. Moving through bustling streets, he memorized the flow of the crowd, the arrangement of buildings, the colors, the shapes, the distant chatter. He noted even the smallest details, the cadence of footsteps on tile, shoes brushing past each other, the murmurs of vendors, the creak of old wooden stalls. Passing through dense forests, he memorized the rustling leaves, the direction of the wind, the way sunlight filtered through the canopy. Every flicker of movement became part of the mental map he was building. Seo walked calmly, breast deep and steady, sword always in hand. 5 years passed like this. 5 years of unbroken discipline. 5 years of relentless awareness. 5 years of holding sword energy while memorizing every scene. And the strain was enormous. Seo staggered slightly, dizziness washing over him. Perceiving every fragment of spatial information was far from ordinary. It demanded constant focus, and pushed his mind to the brink. But his senses had sharpened beyond anything he imagined. His perception no longer relied solely on sight. The faintest sounds reached him with crystal clarity, the rustling of distant leaves, the chirping of insects, the soft crunch of unseen footsteps. Still, doubt tugged at him. Will I even be able to perform martial arts properly like this? He wondered. Then he reminded himself, for now, there were no more sects left to challenge. For nearly 3 decades, Seo had journeyed across the entire Yanggu kingdom, challenging minor sects in sparring matches, and occasionally testing his strength against the major ones. By now, there was hardly a sect in the kingdom he hadn't visited. Seo made his living collecting bounties. His skill had grown to the point where he was no longer confronting mere outlaws. He was capturing dangerous bandits with ease. But he often fought in a dizzy, strained state, forced to battle enemies who attacked without restraint, and used any means they could to kill him. The thought ate at him. Could he truly survive under such relentless conditions? One of the bandits spotted him and shouted, "Brother, it's him!" Another roared, "Found you, you bastard!" But Seo remained calm, gripping his sword tightly. Either way, he thought, this is the path I've chosen. The towering bandit leader stepped forward, wrapped in a leopard-patterned robe, eyes filled with murderous intent. Resting a massive blade on his shoulder, he pointed his second sword towards Seo. "You're dead now!" he roared, his voice rumbling through the forest as the bandits closed in. Seo steadied his breathing. Even with his head pounding, sword chi swirled around him. "Even if I die, this is the path I've chosen." Facing the armed men, he tightened his grip. "Isn't this the path I must walk?" Blood sprayed. Screams tore through the forest. The clash was instant, and brutal. Many years passed. Seo, now aged, his face weathered with deep lines, gazed forward with a solemn expression. His gruff voice carried the burden of decades. "Did you survive, Young Hoon?" Director Kim stood before him, long hair tied back, a deep scar across his face, and smiled warmly. "Yeah," he answered lightly. "This time too." It had been years since Seo returned to this life. As he poured tea, his sharpened senses told him everything. His vision and hearing were keener than he'd ever imagined possible. Even his sense of touch, taste, and smell had become refined, honed over the decade to near perfection. Seo looked down at the steaming cup of tea. Despite everything his senses had achieved, he knew the truth. His expression darkened, shadowed with regret. Even after all these years, he thought, I still haven't become a master at the peak. The weight of decades pressed on him. His eyes burned with fierce frustration. I still haven't. Across from him, Director Kim smirked faintly as he sipped his drink. He said he had become wanted, perhaps too famous among cultivators. 2 cultivators had even set a trap for him. Kim described his own encounter calmly. He had barely escaped an ambush, though he did manage to leave a small cut on one of his attacker's cheeks. He remarked that surely Kim must have gained insight from his own fight as well. But Director Kim scoffed. He dismissed the idea of insight as nonsense. Placing his hand on his cup, he admitted that even now, he still couldn't defeat a judgment stage Taoist. If he failed to escape such a fight, he would simply end up a corpse. Director Kim leaned back slightly thoughtful. He confessed that the extreme state of 5 energies converging to the origin, the very limit he reached, might actually be the end of the martial path itself. He reflected aloud that even the martial arts record he had given Seo, the one claiming martial arts could surpass cultivation, might be flawed. He wondered whether Seo had ever considered that martial arts, no matter how strong, might never truly defeat cultivators. For some reason, Seo saw a reflection of himself in Kim Young-hoon. Kim possessed talent blessed by the heavens. Seo possessed talent abandoned by the heavens. Opposites in every way. Yet, why does he look so much like me? Seo wondered. Seo voiced his frustration, admitting he didn't understand why he couldn't reach the peak realm. Director Kim considered this. Even after mimicking sword energy and adopting the perspective of the peak realm, Seo still couldn't break through, and Kim had no idea why. Under the quiet night sky, Kim suggested they spar again, for old time's sake. Seo gave a faint smile. That's the best thing I've heard in a long while. The moon hung high, casting a silver glow over the forest, as if silently watching. Then, a deafening clash shattered the stillness. Explosive force rippled across the trees. Their battle began. Seo staggered back, clutching his side as pain surged through him. Gritting his teeth, he shouted, "Damn it! What the hell do you think the problem is?" Director Kim, sword in hand, answered honestly, he didn't know. By all logic, Seo should have become a peak master long ago. Blood dripped from Seo's mouth. What do you mean? How strange! How bizarre! Why is this happening? Kim furrowed his brows, equally confused. Even if Seo had 0 talent, this outcome made no sense. Seo stared, shocked, confused, furious. Director Kim placed a thoughtful hand on his chin. Seo, perhaps what you're missing is the right catalyst. Catalyst? Seo repeated. Kim explained, something like desperation, or a force of will so extreme it pushes someone past their limits, something capable of drawing out an inhuman level of focus. Seo snapped. His rage exploded, decades of frustration bursting out of him. What kind of damn catalyst are you even talking about? He roared. I've wielded a sword for over years, my whole life. His eyes burned with fury and desperation. And now you're telling me, what kind of catalyst do I still need to yearn for? And how much more desperately? His voice trembled, raw and ragged. I've risked my life and struggled my whole life just to escape mediocrity. Seo roared, his voice trembling with a lifetime of pressure. He raised his sword high, veins bulging across his arms, eyes wild with desperation. I've activated every chi flow in my entire body. Now even when I sleep, I hold my sword and release sword energy. Even in my dreams, I've reached the point where I process every bit of scenery and every piece of information I see. His voice cracked. Seo collapsed to his knees, the weight of decades driving him into the dirt. Then why? Why? Just why the hell? His voice broke into a raw, almost frantic scream. You're telling me the next realm won't reveal itself to me? Why? Why the hell not? His sword clattered from his grip as he fell forward, sprawled across the ground, breast shallow and ragged. Even he understood how pitiful it was, an old man, nearly groveling before the heavens he could never reach. Why, just why? Seo whispered, agony twisting through each word. A lifetime spent chasing the sword, chasing a realm just out of reach, and still, his hands closed around nothing. His fingers clawed into the earth, trembling. No matter how desperately I pursue it, I can't even begin to comprehend what that next realm truly is. Director Kim stood silently nearby, sword in hand, gazing at Seo's crumpled form. His expression revealed nothing, only deep, silent contemplation. After a long breath, he turned. His long hair swayed as he pivoted, and with a swift, flawless motion, his sword sliced the air. Crack! A burst of force shot forward, slamming into the trees. Trunks split open under the impact. Embers flickered. Splinters cracked and scattered across the dark forest as the sound of tearing wood echoed like thunder. While sparring with Seo, Director Kim had crafted a martial technique, one tailored specifically to Seo's weaknesses. Its markings were now seared into the tree's surface, glowing softly with heat and energy. It may not be much comfort, Director Kim said, voice steady and calm. But I hope learning this will bring you some peace of mind. Seo's eyes widened as he read the glowing characters etched into the wood. Mountain Lord's martial art, and transcending peak step. He muttered, recognition dawning. His grip tightened on his sword, awe and reluctance mixing in his gaze. He looked toward where Director Kim had stood a moment earlier. But he was gone. Seo let out a bitter sigh. And now you'll disappear again. 5 years passed. The courtyard lay bathed in warm autumn light. The forest around it had transformed into a tapestry of gold, crimson, and amber. Leaves drifted gently across the ground like falling embers. Seo tightened his grip on his sword. His weathered eyes, worn by countless years, reflected a quiet understanding. His life was nearing its end. He stood in the courtyard, staring at the sky as though speaking to someone beyond reach. Brother Young-hoon, you died, didn't you? He said softly. His voice trembled with sorrow. A heavy sigh escaped him. So this is the fate the heavens have chosen for both you and me. His gaze softened. With my talent, he thought. No matter how hard I struggled, this was as far as I could go. His expression darkened as he remembered his comrade. And your talent too, perhaps that was its limit. He walked slowly, sword dangling in his hand. No matter how much ordinary men like us struggle, he said in a weary voice, we can't escape the fate the heavens set for us. Then, a voice shot through the air, sharp and furious. What kind of nonsense are you spouting, Seo Eun-hyun? Seo froze. Director Kim stood behind him, blood streaming down his face, staggering, eyes blazing with desperate determination. Wait! Kim cried, his voice trembling. He lurched forward, a violent cough racking his body as blood spilled from his lips. Seo's eyes widened. Your condition is serious. I need to get my medical tools. But before he could move, something grabbed him from behind. What? Seo's body stiffened. His eyes widened in shock. In an instant, Director Kim hurled Seo upward. The two shot into the air, and at that exact moment, the ground beneath them erupted. Boom! A violent explosion tore the courtyard apart, sending dirt and stone blasting outward. A shockwave thundered through the entire area. As they flew through the sky, Seo twisted frantically, staring at Kim, and an icy realization stabbed into him. Weren't both of his arms cut off? Director Kim shouted over the roaring wind. Look, Yoon-hyun! That crazy cultivator bastard is chasing us. A bitter laugh escaped him despite the danger. This is the price I paid for blasting off one of that core formation cultivator's arms. Blood streamed down Kim's face as he broke into wild, almost deranged laughter. I dealt meaningful damage to a judgment stage cultivator, he roared, pride burning in his voice. His bloodshot eyes were filled with fierce, unrestrained fervor. I saw it, he shouted, voice trembling with exhilaration. I saw with my own eyes the realm beyond the 5 energies converging to origin. The one and no martial artist can reach. His expression twisted with manic laughter. I saw it with my own eyes. Seo stared at him, stunned into silence, his eyes wide, his breath frozen, disbelief shattering through him.